Good morning. Woodman here. It is Saturday, June 1st, 2024. If you're wondering about the image here, it's a group called Heart that sang a song called These Dreams. And this is a rock band uh, whose core members brought the band to prominence, primarily through the sisters Ann and Nancy Wilson. Let's take a detailed look about this band real quick, um, and how they came to release the song These Dreams and how they came together, right? So the key band members were Ann Wilson, who did the lead vocals, and she also played flute, and she had joined the band in 1971. We also have Nancy Wilson, the other sister, who played the guitar. She did a lot of backing and lead vocals. She joined the band in 1974. Around the time that the song These Dreams was released, we have these other band members. First of which we have Howard Leese, who was on guitar. He also did keyboards. He joined in 1975. We have Mark Andes, who was on bass, and he joined in 1982. And then we have Denny Carmassi, who was on the drums, and he joined in 1982. So, what about the time when the song These Dreams was released, right? Well, the release date for These Dreams actually occurred in January of 1986, many years after a lot of these band members had joined. It was a single from the album, which was titled after their band, right? Heart, which was released in 1985. In terms of the song's significance, the song was Heart's first single to reach the number one on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. How did the band come together in its formation and its early history? During the early years, Heart's origins actually trace back, like I said, to the 1970s, as per the dates I gave for the individual band members, in Seattle, Washington. So it was on the West Coast. And the band was initially formed by the bassist Steve Fossen and the brothers Roger Fisher on the guitar and Mike Fisher on the drums. Ann Wilson comes along later on, joining the band in 1971, bringing her powerful vocals to the forefront. At that time, the band was known as Hocus Pocus, and later as Whiteheart, before they finally got rid of the white part and just shortened it to Heart. Great idea. Nancy Wilson joins in 1974, which starts to solidify the core lineup, and she adds her guitar skills and vocals to the mix. In terms of early success, the band's breakthrough came through with the release of their debut album, which is actually a few years before These Dreams. That was called Dreamboat Annie, and that was in 1975, which included hits like Magic Man and Crazy on You. How do we eventually get from that to These Dreams? Well, by the mid 1980s, Heart had shifted their sound towards a more polished, more radio friendly form of rock, and they ended up signing with Capitol Records. Um, that's when we finally come to their self titled album, which is the 1985 Heart album. And this marks a significant comeback for the band, featuring a mix of power ballads as well as rock tracks. These Dreams, the song itself was written by Martin Page and Bernie Taupin. And it was originally intended for actually Stevie Nicks, of all people. But Nancy Wilson ended up performing the lead vocals, marking it as one of the few times that she ended up singing lead on a Heart hit. Heart's journey to success was marked by their ability to adapt to changing musical landscapes while maintaining the powerful vocal and instrumental presence of the Wilson sisters. So now let's shift away from this. All right, this was a nice little trip down history lane, but let's get to the real message of today. The real message of today is actually about using thoughts as energy, trying to push thoughts into the brains of other human beings. And so this goes into the area of psychology, this goes into the area of neuroscience, and even metaphysics. So when someone is talking about the idea that everything is energy, and that since everything is vibrating and is part of a universe with different frequencies and wavelengths, how are we going to do this? If you talk to most people, they're not going to be very receptive about the idea. In fact, you may be dismissed outright as engaging in science fiction. But I believe there's definitely something to it, and that it happens all the time, but people aren't recognizing it or understanding how it happens. When I went to bed last night, I was very happy. Had a wonderful night out. It was like a pre-birthday celebration. And yeah, I went into a lot of things during my conversation with the person I went out with last night. And we were talking about my life and where things are going. And at this point, I could say it's definitely terrifying because even though a person like me could be awake and know that I'm in a matrix-like environment, know that I have a purpose, that doesn't mean it's easy, right? Like, and most certainly, I'm not saying it's anything delusional, right? Like, I'm not going to try to be like Keanu Reeves jumping from the rooftop of a building and then floating to the other rooftop of a further away building. That's not what the matrix concept is all about. What I am saying is that our matrix has a lot of properties to it, which is really esoteric knowledge that is not known to many of the masses. So the people that don't know, they almost become like non-player characters or NPCs because they're not active players in the game. Right now, I'm a current active player, and there are stakes. And so I'm seeing the world right now behind the veil. I realize that I'm going to race against time to try to complete the life purpose I agreed to with the Almighty God as co-creator before this physical body dies. The soul or the spirit is eternal. Energy is neither created nor destroyed, it just simply becomes transmuted into a different form. But the bottom line is, I'm still me, right? It almost reminds me of one of my favorite shows, Doctor Who, right? But I'll get into that in a minute. So, as I'm sleeping last night, I'm feeling this sexual energy coming into my dreams. And mind you, when I went to bed, I didn't feel sexual in any way. My mind was not on that. The hope and light was all I was thinking on in my mind, going into a bright future. But the dream that I had became very sexual and explicit relatively quickly. I realized at that point that that is not coming from me. That's coming from someone, whether it be a person, whether it be an entity, and this entity is part of the game. This entity wants to sidetrack me and put me into a headspace that's going to distract me from moving forward into doing the things in my life that matter by getting me stuck in things that, well, look, sex is a beautiful thing, and using Kundalini energy is also a beautiful thing. But this was not that. You might ask yourself, okay, assume a person did do this to me, or assume an entity did do this to me. How did they do it? That's what I want to really talk about in this message, right? So let's look at the conceptual framework. Thoughts as energy. Thoughts are not merely neural activity, but they also generate a form of energy that can traverse space and time. This thought energy can be directed and focused through intent as well as concentration. If you think about the fact that all of us together in this universe are part of a general consciousness, then there exists a universal or collective consciousness where all thoughts and energies converge, right? This collective consciousness acts as a medium through which energy can be transmitted and received. So think of the dreams now as a possible medium. The subconscious mind, particularly during sleep, is more attuned to receiving and interpreting various thought energies. So dreams provide a receptive state where thought messages can manifest as symbols, narratives, or direct messages, even kind of like a metaphor, right? So, what steps would we take to communicate across time and space? First, the person who's intending to send the message would need to be prepared and very focused. They probably have to find a quiet, comfortable place, free of distractions. They would need to engage in some sort of relaxation technique, whether it be deep breathing, whether it be meditation, to clear the person's mind and enhance their focus. They will then need to engage in very good visualization, where they're going to visualize the recipient clearly in their mind. That might involve picturing their face, imagining their presence, recalling specific details about them. Even if you have a current picture, maybe that helps a lot, right? And you're going to strengthen this mental image by thinking about any connective memories or emotional connections or anything that might bring you closer to this person from a mental standpoint. So now you're going to formulate that kind of message you're going to send clearly and concisely in your mind, right? If you're doing this, you're going to set a very strong intention and reach out to the recipient, right? And imagine the recipient getting this message, getting some sort of outcome that you're trying to push towards them. So this is where the energy projection part begins. You use the visualization to see your thoughts transforming into a form of energy, whether it be light, whether it be waves, however you're going to use it to project across time and space. And so you imagine this energy being sent out into the collective consciousness, specifically targeting the recipient. As you're sending the message, you're mentally projecting your thoughts towards the recipient with a sense of certainty and confidence. And there are probably certain groups, certain religious groups, certain cults, certain secret societies that actually train people on this. So now you've got to basically maintain this projection of thought consistently over a period of time. And then eventually you're going to release that thought energy into the collective consciousness, trusting that the message is going to get to the recipient. You're going to let go of any attachment to the outcome and believe in the process. In other words, you have to use sheer force of will that it's going to happen. Now, in terms of the mechanism of reception, the recipient now who's sleeping is now connecting to the collective consciousness, because when we go to sleep, we're almost like in another world where other things can happen. And so the subconscious mind is more open to receiving and interpreting external thought energies during sleep. This would then come into a form of dream manifestation. The thought energy that was sent by the recipient enters the sender, enters into the recipient's subconscious and then begins to manifest into their dreams. The recipient may see from the sender these symbols, these messages, these experience scenarios, which are related to the thoughts the sender sent. In terms of integration and awareness, upon waking, the recipient might recall the dream vividly or have a lingering sense of the message received. In this particular case, I believe I know who may have been responsible for this particular dream, this particular entity, and I know a few things about the game and what's going on and what I'm up against. So obviously, some people would maybe want to even interject who they are when they're sending the message if they're really thinking about this other person. But in this particular case, it's up to no good. So they're not going to be letting you know who they are, and so therefore, that's going to involve something called shapeshifting, the ability to change who you are, your identity, maybe in how you appear, how you feel. Literally, good shapeshifters can switch up in a moment because they're playing a very good role. After a while, repeated connections of the sort might start to enhance the clarity and retention of the message received. And so the more it happens and the better they are at sending the message, the more clear the response the recipient will get. Obviously, it takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of clarity of mind. It takes a lot of faith. It takes a lot of emotional willpower. And having good bonds between the sender and the recipient really is a huge factor. If you've bonded with them, in such a way that, you came really close to them, that's really going to make sending those messages a lot easier. What are the ethical considerations? Well, a lot of it revolves around consent and respect, right? Because when you're sending thoughts to a recipient, if the recipient is not willing, you're violating their autonomy. This is a violation of boundaries. Whether an entity or a sender, wants to try to put me behind in the game, that's not one with an intention for respect of autonomy. That's one who basically is doing the exact opposite. That's violating my space, violating my will to live my life the way I want to live it, and it could ultimately even be harmful. So when you think about the framework of this meditation, this visualization, this deep belief in the interconnectedness of consciousness between us all, you can eventually come to create a structured approach to thought-based communication across time and space, which is really wild, right? This is really wild. And this happened to me. I'm waking up this morning. I'm about to go read a book that I just received, which is called I Ching, as translated by Venabelle Wen, who's the spiritualist I do currently follow because I like her content. I like what the messages she's sending and throwing down. And I'm about to get into other um, things in terms of just improving myself, right? Because as I said, when I went to bed last night, I was in a really good space. Everything in my life seems to be going very well. There's a very positive chance that my hopes and dreams will manifest within the next few months or even over the next few years. That I'm focused, right? Because I'm coming into this with a purpose, as each of you should be as well. Because again, if you recognize that this matrix is a game-like experience, not one that's crazy, you're not going to be able to, throw yourself into 1,000-degree fire and walk out unscathed. I mean, there might be some people who are really talented at walking on fire, but there are limits to our human existence, and yes, you can absolutely kill yourself and die. Do not think the Matrix is some sort of game where all of a sudden you start to play with the zeros and ones and the entire nature of reality shifts. That's not what's going on. There are very real threats. Yes, you can absolutely be killed. Things can happen. But of course, there's also the other factor that once you are not part of this physical world because you do get killed, that ultimately they may end up being a reincarnation, right? Which is the cycle of samsara. What you don't complete in one life, you will have to repeat as a lesson in the next life. So you have to also think about it that way as well, because if you're all like all of us are trying to become better versions of ourselves, ultimately our soul, our eternal existence, by learning from these experiences that happen when we incarnate into human bodies, then obviously you don't want to be doing this forever, right? There are going to be some people that are going to be fast learners. They're going to complete all their lessons and they may not come back. They may just remain up in the heavens as spirit guides and ascended masters. And because their job is done, they've learned everything they needed to learn, while the rest are still here going through it over and over and over again until they get it right. So that is the point, is that I'm trying to move in a positive direction. I'm not trying to live a life of just existing and just like, okay, I didn't get the game, I didn't get the message, I come away after the end of it all not having learned a thing. That would truly disappoint me, because I believe that we make these deals with the divine, and the divine is rooting for us because the divine wants us to do well. We want ourselves to do well, and the divine wants us to do well. So that's why it's so important to stay on track. This has been our Grand Rising Morning Message for Saturday, June 1st, 2024. I hope you enjoyed it. I know it was pretty winding in terms of different topics that came up, but the overall topic being that yes, dream communication does happen, and I have been the recipient several times, and not all of it is good. So just be aware of it, and you can all be the master of your own discernment, doing your own research into this, because don't just take anything that I said. I'm just a guy on YouTube, right? Research it for yourselves. If you go out there and you do the homework, you will figure out what I'm talking about, and you will know that this actually is something very valid, that if you're not aware of it, you need to be. Thank you for supporting my channel. I love you so much. Please like, share, and subscribe. I love you. I love you. Have a wonderful and blessed day. Take care. Bye.